project, Restorative Justice for Out-of-Court Disposals, a rapid review, it's all about using restorative justice for out-of-court disposals. So could you just quickly tell us what an out-of-court disposal is and how they're used?
Yeah, well, an out-of-court disposal is a disposal that's used other than going to court. So when somebody commits a crime, there's a decision to make in terms of how to deal with that particular person. And it can be through a prosecution, which takes us to a court process, or, as in this project, an out-of-court disposal. That can take various forms. It could be a conditional caution, which implies, as it suggests, that the person has to meet certain conditions. For example, to go through a restorative justice process, or indeed it could be just a simple caution. It could be a fixed penalty ticket. So there's a range of disposals that the police and Crown Prosecution Service would decide upon to deal with that particular person once they've usually admitted guilt in respect of that offence.
And why is restorative justice important for out-of-court disposals, and where does it fit in with out-of-court disposals?
Well, the fitting in is that the national strategy for out-of-court disposals recognises that restorative justice can sit alongside any of those particular disposals. Indeed, it can occur sometimes quite a significant period after the actual initial offence has been disposed of. But generally, as I suggested, it could be part of a condition, a conditional caution, for example, where that the parties agree, the victim and the offender agree to go through a restorative process. Why it's important is that why may realise that, and we know this from all of our previous research, that restorative justice can have lifelong effects, benefits for victims and offenders. It can increase victim satisfaction and increase the likelihood of not committing a further offence for offenders. So therefore, it's important to rightly seize the opportunities to maximise the number of out-of-court disposals that have a link to a restorative justice process.
Okay, so now we can see how restorative justice and out-of-court disposals kind of link together. So why is this project, what are the aims of this project? What is it trying to do?
In a nutshell, we're trying to increase the number of opportunities for restorative justice linked to out-of-court disposals. That's what our overall aim is.
And how are you going to do that?
Well, as the name suggests in the project title, it's a rapid review. And what we're doing is looking at the current landscape nationally. There's a lot of work already being done in respect of other organisations and charities looking at out-of-court disposals in particular, not necessarily looking with an eye upon the restorative justice side as we're going to do. So it's really doing a lot of desktop research, contacting key stakeholders, contacting some of our partners that we work with on a regular basis in the restorative justice community to identify where there is good practice and then be able to share that nationally to make a difference. So that's what we intend to do with this particular project. It is a short-term project, it's a maximum 3 months, but it does really give us that opportunity to have a real eye upon the restorative justice element linked to the out-of-court disposals.
And why is this project so important right now?
Well, I think as everybody realises, with COVID-19 currently impacting upon the criminal justice system, there's a huge backlog of court cases, which means that victims and offenders are being impacted negatively because they're sitting waiting for justice to happen. So again, if we can somehow unlock some of those cases and see an opportunity to have more resolution through restorative justice process, perhaps that might be will be a real benefit to the victims and offenders who are in the process, and also to the practitioners involved in the criminal justice process as well. So the timing is perfect. It gives us a quick opportunity to have a look at what's actually happening on the ground. We know from YME that restorative justice can take place, not necessarily bring the parties together in an online process. So it's really just trying to understand and examine and identify good practice that we can share to try to assist the whole criminal justice community at this particular time.
Wow, definitely important project. But what will be the biggest challenges that during this 3-month project?
Some of the challenges will be challenging what people have sort of beliefs. So, for example, there is a belief that restorative justice can only take place when you've got two people and the practitioners, etc., in the room. Well, we've already shown that's not necessarily the case. So we've got to challenge some of the sort of beliefs that people might have, and try to also challenge the idea that, particularly for police officers, that restorative justice is another task that adds on to the list of tasks that they have, and actually get them to see that actually it's a really good investment. Restorative justice services are generally there to support their work, and that a referral to them can really unlock, great satisfaction for victims, but also stop that offender from re-offending longer term, which has an impact upon their, longer term demands. So it's really, that's the challenge, is really sort of challenges some of the preconceptions that people have around restorative justice, which have existed for a while, and it's trying to really get into that to really try to make a difference.
What are you most excited about?
Well, this funding through the RANK organisation and Department of Digital Media and Culture has really given us the opportunity to use some of that funding that they're giving us to examine this in a fairly short period to try to make a difference. And we know through COVID that there is an opportunity to try to have a significant impact. What gets me up in the morning, what makes me tick, is the idea of making a difference. That's what it's all about. It's trying to make a difference to the people who are impacted upon, on a daily basis. When I'm talking about victims and offenders, and I know from the stories that we hear back that it can be life-changing for people. So, yep, let's seek to try to be life-changing project for the people who get the opportunity to go through RJ. That's the exciting part.